Mm. Grab your wigs, grab your lids. Welcome back to No Cap. You can see, or DC. Clocked in, man. Clocked in. Fighting out the itis. Oh yeah. You don't follow the Instagram page. No Cap Podcast. NOCAPP Podcast. And then you'll see my page on there. You'll see everything I'm up to. Daily schedule. Kitchen activities, foodie activities. Just finding a lane and finding a space for everything I enjoy doing, man. Because even the boring part of life can be fun. Instead of trying to chase the highest of the highs, you can raise your floor instead of trying to shoot for the stars all the time, man. But, you know, some folk prefer to always go on vacation, try to buy the expensive dinners, go to the 5-star restaurants, high fashion, expensive vehicles. Want to stay in that environment of life, but that temporary high is going to still be temporary. You still got to come back down to reality, and you always got the choice to just make your reality better. But story time, right? Once upon a time, I used to be one of the most social people you ever see. I mean, conversing with folk, joking, familiar but not friendly, right? A lot of folk know who I was, recognize my face, recognize the name, recognize the voice, all of that, but didn't really too much know who the person was or what the behind the scenes of life looked like. And as life transpired, just pulled back a little bit, not even being in the environments to be seen as often. Started being more intentional with what I had going on, what I was doing, where I was at, just every facet of life. And the more intentional I got with myself, the more intentional I got about who was around me and my interactions with folk. And I'm treating this page like a salt of the earth platform, but the platform is going to be built on my actual existence, my real life. Somebody got to be the example that folk can criticize or model after. I'm not afraid of the criticism, man. So using this space to communicate, to interact. So folks who I might never meet in the flesh feel like they know me. Personality the same. Talk most in a little bit. Real friendly though. Real respectful. But honest nonetheless. And that's the story, right? The thing that made me pull back from being around folk was the quality of interaction. The quality of interaction was disgusting. Because as I got more intentional with myself, I started being more critical of myself. And then that started to leak over with interaction with folk. So, for men, right? How you spoke to folk, what your goals are, whether you expressed yourself and communicated, whether you had morals that shown themselves through your actions and through your words and beliefs, all of that mattered. And this was for celebrities, musicians, entertainers, and daily interactions. So I might have mentioned it before, like I was never a fan of Young Thug or Gunna, none of that, just because I like how you carried yourself. So wasn't with it. That's just a small example. And it's the same with the Kendrick versus Drake conversation. It was easy. One's mannerisms and behaviors spoke for themselves, and the other spoke for themselves. And the whole point of celebrity is your entire life is under a microscope. So it's all a part of the package. What you do and how you do it plays into what kind of support you got. It matters. But it's not like that just for celebrities. It was like that for real people as well. So same level of criticism. You're a man, you got multiple kids, you don't take care of none of your kids. Like, I don't want to hang out. Don't want to participate in any activities with you. Don't want to share a favorite hobby of yours. Don't want to support your business because it's not how you're supposed to operate. The folk who are upstanding individuals deserve the utmost support, and the opposite to the other end. And that's for men. Remember, these recent string of episodes is specifically for men, male perspective. On the other end of the spectrum, dealing with females, interactions got weird, where what used to be simple conversation now is awkward. Whereas can't tell if you are just treating me like a good person or whether you flirting with me with some kind of like hidden agenda. And women started moving like it. So it gets hard to even make any female friends because people are socially awkward now. They're not authentic with themselves, not authentic in what they portray, what they represent, or what they're after. So they already assume that other people aren't as well. And that's projection right there. I know a lot of folks use the word projection, but don't really know what it means. Nah, to know something to be true about yourself, you then assume that to be normal for everybody. So even if you have not the worst, but like subtle, just inconsistencies, let's say, if you got subtle inconsistencies, mentally you gonna include that into all of your interactions because you understand yourself not to be truthful. So you can only expect of others what you expect of yourself. And it's common and normal for folk who are authentic in everything about themselves. They're not worried about what other people do. They know themselves, so it's easy to interact with others. You know what real looks like, so it's easy to maneuver through the fakes, so to speak. So making male friends is like, dang, I got to see what you stand for, what you stand on. Easy as that. When dealing with women, it's like, I got to figure out whether you are authentic, because if you're not authentic, this won't go nowhere. I can't interact with you in any kind of way if you're inauthentic. And you see the difference there with men. Authenticity is real, but the intentions are poor. Women, it doesn't matter what the intentions are because the authenticity isn't there. And when you repetitively going through interactions like this, right, it's traumatic because you're going to bump your head up against something real uncomfortable. And you're going to feel that discomfort. And then you have to repeat that over and over and over again. You basically program yourself to go, hey, this is a scab that's building up. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And at some point, gonna have to rip the scab off for you to actually heal. And that is trauma dumping. And I wanted to bring this episode for men. And remember, you got a story or perspective that you want to share or comment you want to share, leave it right there in the bottom of the video. So I'm gonna read it, and other folk will read it. And you might have an experience or an opinion that they share, but they don't feel emboldened enough to share on their behalf first. You know, we're in a follower culture right now where I need somebody else to say it first, and then I can agree rather than speaking on my own behalf. But men's mental health has been neglected for so long, specifically black men, that got one or two options. All black men have a dumpster full, if not junkyard full, of trauma. And there's only two ways to handle it. There's the trauma dump / explosion where everything comes out at once, or you start finding outlets where you can start letting that flow and releasing some of that pressure off yourself. But option 2 only comes from having proper connections and a supportive network, something that a lot of black men specifically do not have. So we've seen a lot more option 1, trauma dumping, where you get into an interaction with somebody, you just like, man, F it, I can't take it no more, and you blow up. Whether the person you blow up on played a huge part or a small part, doesn't matter. Just there's going to be a straw that breaks the camel's back. And then if you're not trauma dumping, you explode, where you've been neglecting emotions for so long and neglecting your experiences and unpacking your experiences for so long that everything just comes out all at once and you don't even know how to sort through it. And again, specifically from a man to men, you got to find men to connect with, because be your only outlet. We dealing with only the truth of life here, no cap. You got to rely on other men to express your discomforts or experiences from a male perspective. It's 2025, bro. We've lived enough and we've collected enough data and we've lived through enough experiences to realize that women not going to be here for you. And you can't control that. And I'm only speaking on the majority, because you'll start seeing men get married, and I done found me one. I can speak to her. Boom, cool. But for the vast majority, it's not the case. And even talking to married men, they still go, yep, it's a lot of stuff that can't tell her. So I need other men as outlets to be able to communicate with and to interact with. And it's easier to communicate efficiently and not trauma dump when you're dealing with men, just because the back and forth is easier. Boom, I've lived this, I've seen that, I've experienced that, dang, me too. And you start comparing the details that are similar or different, and it's easier to communicate what's going on. When you're dealing with women today, right, they don't have any understanding of the male perspective. None. So they don't understand what it's like to be male. How would they understand how you experience something in life? And remember, I'm speaking in generalities. Because of the culmination of legal changes, family structure, social interactions. Women don't have much insight on the psyche of a man, especially black men. For us to be some of the most expressive men in the world, one of the most creative, some of the most loving individuals in the world, is crazy how little insight the world has of the psyche or the experiences of black men, including black women. And that limits your ability to be able to communicate, or not as much communicate as ground or connect with other individuals. You have to understand something in order to know how to go about interacting with it. First time you seen a stove, you know what you was doing. When you buy a new iPhone, you don't know all the tricks of the trade. You don't know all the doohickeys that happen with it. You don't know all the ins and outs, the tips and tricks of the gadget that you purchase. You just feeling your way through it. And it's the same. We talk about black men, and worse is we're constantly adapting. So what was true for us one day could be different depending on the changes that happen around us. And with the conversation being about trauma bonding, I mean, not trauma bonding, but trauma dumping, with ours, it's usually very explosive because even though we have to represent strength and toughness, black men are expressive. Try to have a conversation with a white dude. You can't really understand how they feel, what they thinking, or any of that, just because the conversation is unseasoned. When you talk to a black man, you pretty much understand how you feel, what he thinking, and all of that. Hey, bro, how you living? Man, shit, can't call it. Nothing special happening that day. Easy. Our mannerisms, our vibe, our energy, you can sense that. So with that being the case, and still feeling like you don't have anybody to talk to, or that's understanding of your situation, that makes it even more so irritating. Makes it even more aggravating, and it makes you feel even more lonely, because then the only option you have outside of just operating with regularity is you have to be so aggressive with communicating that it's bound to make people uncomfortable. So it's like your mood is visible on your face, where you pretty much know exactly how you feel, and people can see how you feel, but the majority of the world will bypass and walk right through you and just assume, well, whatever it is, he got it. And through your everyday conversation, bro, how you feeling, man? The day ain't it. Nobody will check in on you. Then you get to the next step of, man, is there anything I can do for you? Man, I'm fucked up. And our conversations simply go like that until you get to the point where you just like, hey, man, I'm sick of these hoes. These niggas get me fucked up. I'm going to crash out. And by the time you got to that point, you've tried to initiate the conversation, but folk got to meet you halfway. If folk don't meet you on the doorstep of that conversation, that's where you lead to trauma dumping, where you need their consent in order to communicate what's going on with you. In order for you to decompress, you need somebody else's permission to use them as an outlet. But get right to it, man. Not sure if folks can see this, but I try to keep this even more blunt than I have ever been. Got Thursday night football game up here, boy. Some kind of distraction. But be as direct as possible. Trauma dumping is simply expressing a whole lot of trauma in a little bit of time. So you having a conversation and you go deep into a certain interaction you've had and you're emotional about it. Trauma dumping. I've been a victim of this before. Again, told you one of the crazy stories I've had dating where you're like, man, this can't be serious. There's no way that you really tried to go about finessing me in such a way. You really tried to just do me. You tried to treat me like I was stupid. And when you express that with somebody without them asking you to express that, trauma dumping. And then I had to put this on here. Trauma dumping is not venting. So it's two different things. Trauma dumping is, man, this specific event happened that made me feel some type of way. I'm going to tell you all about it. I'm going to tell you how I was frustrated about it. I'm going to tell you my experience and the outcome of it without you asking me about that. Compared to venting is less emotional. It's not as specific and there's a wider range. So that is one incident that happens, man, these because it's crazy. Communicate with these folk, they doing this or that. Man, I don't even play that game, so I move around. Venting. You can go slightly into more detail, but you're not emotional about it. You more so want to use dejected, but you're not really dejected. You're checked out from that situation. You know it's a normal occurrence and you rather not participate in that interaction again. Compared to when you trauma dumping, again, it gets explosive. You get emotional about it. And again, you got to find other black men because the only folk that understand you in this day and age are other black men. When the family was closer, when sons were closer to their mothers, when sisters were closer to their brothers, and when black men and black women had a better interactive relationship and they were more familiar with the lifestyles of each side, then you can have those connections. But with feminism coming in and basically turning it into black women versus black men and black men being put at the bottom of the totem pole again, there is no connection with the life of a black man or the experience of a black man. Black man, the role of white folk was legit to isolate black men as best as they could without just outright killing all of them. So you close to that isolation, but you're not down there by yourself. And so after you, man to the right of you, man behind you, man next to him, man in front of you, turn around, put your brains together and figure out how to get out this hole. But to avoid trauma dumping, right? Because even though you want to bond and connect and ground yourself and have black men as outlets, you still interact with different people of different creeds, different sexes, and you still interact with them. So there's a certain way you have to go about interacting with them. And even if the conversation goes into one of discomfort, certain protocol you got to follow just to make sure you don't trauma dump on folk and you keep it respectful while also keeping it authentic. First question is it appropriate? A lot of women specifically ask you to be as forthcoming and as honest as possible. They don't want that. It's not what they're looking for. Just because you heard it does not mean that's what they meant. So unless you specifically asked about it, don't do it. Unless it's specifically asked for, don't even get into it. Is it appropriate? Is it too intense? Even if they ask you about it and it's appropriate. If it's a situation where it gets real, again, don't even do it. Give the most bland, vanilla description you can. Try to keep it as general as possible. Man, this is the biggest one right there. That third one, that third line is the biggest one. Do they actually give a fuck? And that's something that you can't even ask about. That's something that you have to use your intuition to figure out. You have to use insight to figure out, because even though somebody's asking you about something doesn't mean they actually care about it. One of the things for me is, which makes it tough for me to interact with new folk, is I don't do small talk. I only speak with authenticity, things that I care about, things that I pay attention to, things that I prioritize, and figuring out what the same things are for people. So I don't too much have that problem when interacting with new folk coming towards me. But when you're interacting with folk, you got to figure out whether they actually care. Because if their intentions don't align with the conversation, then you'll end up accidentally trauma dumping just because folk ask you about something that they never really cared about. And you can pretty much tell whether somebody don't care or not, because the reaction that you'll get in return is one that's it seems disrespectful just because it's disingenuous. You get okay, that's what's up. Dang, that's crazy. Then what? If you get like a blasé answer like that, chances are they honestly do not care what your answer was. So suck like Chuck. Which is why this one is lending itself toward interact with men. Because if you're having a conversation with men about traumatic experiences, majority of the time y'all about to bond, because it's some that I done lived through, that you done lived through, that we got a shared experience. And say you dating, or it's a woman that you have minimal history with, again, is it appropriate? Because if y'all don't have an extensive history together, chances are they are yet to determine whether they give a fuck or not. And the last one, are they capable of handling your conversation? That part, super important, mainly for folk who are interacting with women or who are dating, because women don't know what men want. They don't know what's important to men because, again, speaking in generality here, let me put the preface right there. They don't have any insight on men. They don't know what you prioritize. They don't know what you go through, so they don't know what you prioritize. They don't know what you do, what you think, what your abilities are, so they do not know what you need, where your shortcomings are, or where you need growth. And when you're having conversations, a lot of the time, if they don't give a fuck, because they lack empathy. Because natural for humans to see one in discomfort and to feel sympathy or empathy for that person. And for good people to see if they can help in any way to assist in any situation. That's empathy right there. I feel for you. And with men, that empathy comes from I can relate. Relation is empathy for us. When you're dealing with women, especially as a black man, they can't relate. So you got to find one who empathizes with you, because one who empathizes is one who gives a fuck. And if they don't, then they don't. Easy as that. So all that to say, if you got trauma, if you got experiences that you've lived through that have affected you in some way, shape, or form, a big push, especially from the overly educated or from people who don't understand, is go to therapy. Therapy can work, but therapy's not for everybody. Not too long ago, there were no such thing as therapists, but mental health wasn't in shambles either. Because therapy is like pharmaceuticals, right? Once upon a time, you would go through an ailment and your ancestors understood what plant, what meal, what water, what remedy did you have to then go through, experience, or add to the situation in order to remediate your ailment. And the same thing was for mental health. Instead of go to a therapist, you know who to talk to, where to talk to them, and when to talk to them. And it wasn't a therapist you was talking to, it was the community. Folks who are older than you, the generations from before you, again, there's nothing new under the sun. It might take shape differently with each generation, with technology and society moving in one direction. Things might shape shift a little bit, but the experiences are the same. So your older generation were the folks you would talk to. Your grandparents, the elders of your community. And when you couldn't reach them, fathers, uncles, older cousins, just people with age gaps. And the same could be true today. Therapy is good for a lot of people. It's helpful for a lot of people. But for the majority of people, therapist isn't the answer. Having a community, a network, having personable outlets that you can communicate to, communicate with, and empathize with. That's the answer right there. If you got problems at work, somebody who will understand working in that field or issues that you will have. Problems at home, folk who have similar family structures to you that have lived experience. Problems with diet, somebody who's been through diet shifts. Problems with exercising, finding somebody who they've gone through that before. And somebody who looks like you, comes from a similar environment, has similar experiences. All of these things are valuable when it comes to interacting properly and not just trauma dumping on folk. So you really just, instead of having to bottle everything up until you explode or trauma dump, or instead of being uncomfortable, find 4 or 5 folks with shared experience, with lived experience, that you can have an open stream of communication with. If they're your age, cool, you need that. But also look for some that are younger than you, because you'll be surprised how much communicating to the next generation or communicating with the next person in line will help you with your problem. It'll help you find a sense of self-awareness, because it'll make you look at your problem or your experience from the very beginning and walk yourself through it again. And the same goes for folk from older generations. You need older folk because they've had that lived experience. They've been through that. They've seen it. And even if you don't get advice, it's not even about the advice as much as it is having that outlets to be able to communicate authentically and not having to just go through traumatic experiences over and over and over again and not be able to let out how you felt about it. So, as a black man, 2 black men, it's easy. We can stop trauma dumping easily just by relying on other black men. And I don't play the pause or homophobic games that folk play. Nah, brother. I want to be better, so I got to do better. If you comfortable where you at, cool, but you can move around. There's folk out here who need better, who long for better, need that. Can't have you playing in this space, because then it makes it uncomfortable for folk to be able to communicate and be their best selves. For your entertainment, you want to limit the ability of folk to be their best self. Can't have that. So, black men, find some other men you can communicate with. We all got lived trauma. We all have experienced trauma. We all need outlets for that trauma. It told you only got 2 options, man. The best option, find that network. Find some folk that you can rely on, where it's a 2-way stream of communication going out, coming in, input and output. Or option 2, your ass explode. You crash out. Finally can't take it no more. Or you end up trauma dumping. You're going to scare all the hoes.
Yeah.